Welcome to the book podcast. We're talking about The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson today. And Mark, you're going to start us off with a quick little summary. Then after we get the summary, if either Jackson or I have something to add, we can add it. Yep. And then I want everybody's rating on the book. We're going to do out of 5. So it can be anywhere from a 0 to a 5.
Yeah, I think we decided that the scale from 1 to 10 was inaccurate to books, because when you go on Amazon or something, it's 1 to 5.
Yeah, usually. It's always 5 stars. So we'll stick with a 5-star rating.
Smarter. Okay. All right, so I think I can do this 30-second summary. Is probably not going to be 30 seconds.
It won't be.
So Dr. Montague is interested in paranormal sciences and wants to get a crack team of, what would you call them? People with psychic abilities together, and he elicits the help of a bunch of people, and only 2 respond: Eleanor Vance and Theodora. I don't know if we ever get her last name.
I'm not sure.
Eleanor Vance has had a history with a poltergeist, and Theodora was able to mind read, or had a higher rating on mind reading on cards. Like she could discern shapes or angles or something from an undisclosed card. So both of them had some paranormal psychic abilities. And they get called to this house called Hill House that has a history of some paranormal activities. And they go there. You get the background. Most of the story is given through the frame of reference of Eleanor Vance and her journey to the house. She's the first to arrive. She meets Mr. and Mrs. Dudley, the caretakers. Creepy vibe from both of them and the house itself. She has this feeling that she needs to turn around and leave, but she doesn't. She stays, and then Theodora comes later, and then Dr. Montague, and then Luke Sanderson. He's the nephew of the owner of the house, and he's a little bit of a troublemaker. He's sort of given the job to babysit these pseudoscientists as they come and investigate the unknown in this house. Things get a little weird. There's just odd vibes, dark feelings in the house, uncertainty in the house. And they go through several nights. I think the first or second night there's some noise. Eventually, Theodora and Eleanor sort of join together in the bedroom one night because they're both a little spooked. Dr. Montague and Luke have no sense of anything going on that night. And then there's several nights with nothing going on. And then a couple nights later, there's some other things that go on. And then later on, Dr. Montague's wife, Mrs. Montague, and her boy toy, I don't know what that guy is, Arthur.
He's like her bodyguard / like associate. I don't quite.
They're both so annoying.
So really weird. Annoying. Yeah, so
they
weird.
Come and then they kind of amp up the investigation with their own, I don't know what you call them, fringe, non-conventional, non-scientific methods. Eventually, you follow the twisted, dark path of the falling apart of Eleanor's mind as she kind of melds or joins with the house. Eventually, it gets a little bit too hectic, and Mrs. Montague feels like it's just too much and she needs to go home, so she goes home. On the way home, she says, you guys can't keep me from this house, and she drives into the large oak tree in the front property just before she wonders what she's doing, why no one's stopping her as her life passes. I guess in her mind, forever then melded with the house and its dark past.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great summary.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It was probably like 5 minutes long, though.
Yeah.
Too long.
Not quite 30 seconds.
Cut my ums out, and that'll save 30 seconds.
Pretty good, though. What would you rate it?
I think it's maybe a 4. I think it's a 4.
Okay.
4. Yeah, it's good. Fun. It's easy to read.
Very significant book from what I've researched.
Yeah. I give it a 3.5 star rating. It wasn't one that I'm like, the higher the rating for me is like, I can't wait until I get to pick it up again. This wasn't one of those books that I looked forward to picking up every time, but it did have me intrigued. I did enjoy reading it, but I wasn't just like dying to find out what's going to happen. And well, there were a few points where I was that way. So that's why I'd say 3.5, but it wasn't quite a 4 for me.
I'd say a 3, but the more I learn about the book, the more I like it.
Yeah.
I feel like the more, because the first time I just like read it through blankly without any like other aspects trying to like prune me with like knowledge, I guess. It just seems very like, what? Wait, what's going on? Because Eleanor's personality like swapping is really complicated to understand. I feel like
Yes.
for a newbie reader.
Yes.
And but like I said, I feel like the more you understand about the book, the more creepy it becomes. Not like jump scary, but suspenseful and like oh, that's what that meant. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the
And
vibe
the
I kinda
idea
get.
that it's a little bit trickier writing because it's older writing.
Yeah.
It's just the verbiage and kind of these run-on sentences sometimes with
Long
lots
sentences.
of description and not necessarily wrong, but it's very atmospheric.
Yeah.
So it can get a little bit cumbersome at times because we don't read a lot of books that way anymore, or they aren't written that way anymore. We have a different, more contemporary style of writing. So I feel like it can get a little bit tricky, but I get what you're saying, but I agree. The more I learn about her, the more I learn about her influence on the whole horror slash like spooky. What's that word I'm looking for? I don't know.
Thriller,
Genre. Yeah,
maybe?
thriller. That's what I'm looking for. Thriller style of writing. I'm like, yeah, she was ahead of her time in a lot of
Pretty, yeah,
ways.
pretty influential.
Well, should we give a little character background for everyone? Do we want to get some more details on characters, or
I think we'll just kind of learn about that as we
Yeah,
go.
weave
We
it
don't need
in.
to like
okay?
deep dive into characters.
Because if they've read it, I think they're kind of.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
If they haven't, they have your summary now.
Yeah.
So they've heard about them.
And yeah, it's a good book. I would read it.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I felt like as a haunted house book, I expected to have more creepy, like nighttime, unknown sounds and creepy characters or shadows moving, and there wasn't a lot of that. It tended to be more, I guess, psychological. It's like in the mind, the uncertain. What's the term they use? The
Unseen.
uncertain narrator. The
the
unreliable
unreliable
narrator kind of makes you wonder what's really going on, and just you get more and more confused as the book goes on. But how do we go? What's the next thing?
Well, I think one of the big things about this book is all the theories that can be thrown around about what Shirley Jackson was trying to say. And so, I mean, maybe the first question I have for you guys is, when do you think Eleanor went crazy in the book?
Oh, okay.
That's a good question.
I'm gonna dive right in. Then I'll tell you my theory, and it's gonna take a minute, but it's like a big long theory.
Okay,
I think the house is its own entity, and it's like an energy-seeking source. I'll give some background, and I think it seemed at first that Eleanor and Theodora were like the leftovers, those with psychic or paranormal activity that responded to this email and were invited to the house. But I think maybe they were selected by the house to come. Eleanor might have been like the perfect solution for the house. I think the mental illness was there from the beginning. I think the house was an amplifier. In fact, I think she was the source of all the haunting. And I'll get into that if you want to right now, or if we can get into it later. I think it was her mind, her powers that led to everything.
That's interesting, actually, because as I read, I kept wondering, is the house actually haunted, or are all of these people literally crazy in their own regard? So to hear you say that makes me think, yeah, maybe they really were all crazy. For me, answering Jackson's question, I felt like she gave signs of mental breaks even as she was driving out to the house, where she had these weird thoughts. Like she was driving by what was that tree that she saw, or the bush?
Oleander tree?
Yes, the oleander. And she was saying this is poisonous, and she's talking about how it could kill a person, and she's like, ooh, I want these in my house one day. I want to have these like surrounding the driveway or something. I can't remember the exact wording, but I was like,
oh, they're so pretty. We have these in our house in Texas. Those really delicate, like,
I know, which is so funny.
Pink white flowers.
I remember so we didn't plan our front yard in Texas the builder it came with the house, like certain plants they just planted in the front yard. And it was later when somebody, I think it was a painter came or somebody, and he saw that we had cats and young kids.
Yeah.
And he was like, do you know that these are oleanders and they're poisonous? And we were like, no.
Yeah, he told a story of these Boy Scouts in California that used because they have long, skinny sticks to roast marshmallows with this oleander branches, and ate the marshmallows, and some got sick, and I think a couple even died from the poison from these.
Creepier for Halloween, I guess.
I know.
Yeah.
So to hear her talking about this poisonous bush, tree, whatever you want to call it, and how she's like interested and intrigued by it and wants it, I was like, she's a little crazy. So I was already sort of getting that vibe that she was crazy on her way out, but she definitely descends quickly once she's in the house of like her mental is like, and you start getting that unreliable narrator where you're like, oh my gosh, she's having weird thoughts in her head and saying different things. So what did you think?
Well, I think she's pretty much crazy the whole time. I think that she never wasn't crazy. I think just even taking care of her mom and being stuck in that situation for so long. Yeah. And even having to like hear her talk about it where she's like, I felt like her saying that the death of her mother was going to be her fault no matter what. Because she kind of gets into how she kind of remembers the night her mom, so she took care of her mom, and she remembers the night of her mom dying, like vaguely remember hearing her scream out for help.
Yes.
And how she is like, well, I didn't like do anything. I just went back to
let
sleep.
It happen.
So,
but sort of blamed herself. I think
I think that was maybe
carried that guilt with her.
I think that's maybe the beginning of her crazy. And
that whole experience, though, I think arrested her development. She was never an adult. I think she's 32 or something, but she never was an adult. She was always her mother's daughter, her mother's caretaker. So she had somewhat of an adult role, but didn't she seem very like
childlike,
middle schoolish when she's interacting with Theodora and like flirting with Luke? I think even flirting with Theo sometimes. She just was like real needy, clingy.
Well, she was weird. She even was like, I'm going to move with you, Theodora. When we leave, I'm going to come to your house. Do you remember that part? And she was like, I'm going to go live with you. And it was just this weird, like, and then Theodora was like, I don't think so. Like, this is great. We're having a lot of fun here, but like, we'll go our own separate ways. You have your own life you need to get back to.
Right.
So she was very immature and very stunted. So I agree. Like, something stunted her growth.
So kind of going back to what you said about Theodora, I think her rejecting Eleanor from her house was eventually what led Eleanor to become crazy, because the night before was the night that the house they experienced not Arthur or Montague's wife, but the Luke, Theodora, Eleanor, and Dr. Montague all experienced the worst experience that night. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but she ended up surrendering herself to the house somewhat because she was the only one.
That's interesting.
It says something about, I forget exactly what the wordage was, but she was also the only one who passed out and then woke up after that experience.
I forgot about that.
I think that kind of clicked her into realizing I don't have a home to go back to, which she'd been lying to everyone about the whole time, that she did have a home. And then she was like, right now, all I have is, as a close friend, is Theodore and Hill House. Yeah. That's all I have. And so Theodore saying, you have no place in my home. Why would I let you move in with me? I think ended up completely surrendering her to whatever either mental thing she was going through or what Hill House was putting her through. And
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
She was, I think, probably the first friend or first friend she's ever had. Her relationship with her sister in the beginning seemed a little bit strained, and she had the responsibility, even though she's younger, of caring for the mom. And then I think regretted that, stole the car, came out here. She didn't have a place to go back to. I think she was, her search for home, I think was like her underlying motivation for everything she did. The home was either with Theo. I think at one point she talked about coming out and maybe meeting a handsome boy. So maybe for a while she thought Luke might be the home. Ultimately, the home for her became the house. Her search for home was found in the house.
Yeah.
And remember, was it the first night after she and Theo were in the bedroom, they went out in the hallways, and written on the wall was that saying, "Help Eleanor come home, Eleanor."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think that was the beck and call. But to my theory, I think
Yeah, I want to hear it.
so. From the beginning, Eleanor was thought of to have was invited because of her experience with the poltergeist that Dr. Montague had heard about. The poltergeist experience is very vague and short. It talks
Yes.
about her father's death, and then the house being kind of pummeled with rocks. And then people would talk about that, and she would talk about it like she wasn't, like she's like, oh well, I think it might have just been our neighbors throwing rocks at her house. I think she was the source of energy
Yeah.
of making the rocks attack the house
Interesting.
to help with her trauma. She had that sort of semi-abusive relationship with her mother. The
Mhm.
father might have been the only buffer for that, and then she was left alone with the mother.
So are you saying that she was throwing the rocks, or
No,
that
I think she has
she brought
supernatural
in a
powers.
force? I see.
Hmm.
Okay.
And the house knew that, and so the house knew that. And that
It's
might
like
be
seeking
the
her out.
weakest theory, but I think that she probably had some extra powers, and then the house brought her to these things,
Yeah.
and then she kind of tethered to the house. So
Hmm.
here's the other thought about all the experiences that were had with Eleanor. I take that back. I just realized. So my theory might fall apart right now.
Well,
Live.
explain your theory first, and then
On TV. Okay, so I'll explain the theory and then I'll explain how it fell apart. I thought, until I just realized now one story, that all the experiences happened with persons with Eleanor. It's either Eleanor with Theodora or Eleanor with all four of them when they were in that, what's that study called? They had
The
another,
library
Yeah.
or whatever.
the lounge or something
yeah,
like that.
I know what you're talking about.
But it was always with her. And even when Mrs. Montague came, they had their Ouija board. They had another name for it, planchette or planchetti
Mm-hmm.
tool to help communicate with the
Yeah.
other world. And they had these like weird ideas that I think were kind of like the stereotypical or the trope ideas of horror that most people think of, like a nun that has this sort of sordid past with the priest, and they're in the walls of the house. Like it's just like your stereotypical
Mrs.
scary
Montague
story.
pissed me off the whole book.
She was she's
She was
so
perfectly
annoying.
She
annoying.
was, yes.
Perfectly annoying.
I was because okay, this is actually. I'll let you finish. But
I'm rambling. I'll try and go quick. So even when they had her, like this nun idea, I don't think had anything to do with it. And then they brought them in and they had them do another reading, and the reading was it's like Nell. What I wrote it down. Arthur carried on. He says, "What do you want?" And then the ghost, or that thing that he responded to, says, "Want to be home." Arthur says, "What are you doing? What are you doing now?" And he says, "Waiting." And then Arthur says, "Waiting for what?" "Home." And then Arthur says, "Oh, she repeated home again." They do that a lot. Like they repeat, like just missing the message.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it may have been Eleanor's mind saying, "I want a home. I want a home." Not even
Interesting.
knowing that she was creating that, but
Yeah.
her energy created the response
Yeah.
on this planchette saying, "I
That
want a
makes
home. I
sense.
want a home."
Yeah. Because that's what we just have been discussing, is how much she was looking for home.
Yeah,
So that does make sense to me.
that's interesting. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, oh my gosh, Miss Montague. She was
Oh my
so
gosh,
annoying.
she's perfectly annoying. Perfect.
yeah. She's everything she
She
does.
really was.
And like poor Mr. or Dr. Montague.
I
being
know.
married to that woman all the time, and she's always like, "Are you saying that I'm wrong? Are
Yeah.
you saying that I'm wrong about this thing?" Like, oh my god.
Oh my gosh. I wish we collected a compilation of her quotes, because they are just so manipulative
Oh,
Yeah.
and
so manipulative.
and down-putting.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the poor doctor, I think maybe was a little timid, and he was trying his best to be scientific and academic about it. But she comes in with her like hoity-toity ideas and
Yeah.
like with her man
Mhm.
guy. And I read online, someone theorizes that she represents a mother. She's like coming in, she's kind of controlling.
Huh.
Not all mothers are like this, but this is what someone said. You're a good mother.
Thank you.
Controlling, and then Arthur actually represents the father, because he's the principal of the school. He's all about athletics, and he talks about boys that are being wimpy and they need to learn their lesson.
Huh.
And that it may have been that symbol of the mother that triggered Eleanor to finally crumble, because she had that poor relationship with her
Yeah.
mother.
Hmm.
So probably a little bit of Theo and maybe even a little bit of Mrs. Montague there sort of triggered the final fall. Anyway, I talked a lot.
That's so interesting. Yeah, she was just super annoying. I felt like she came in and she was like, "You aren't getting this done fast enough. I'll get it done." and then just kind of pushed all of her ideas on everybody and took control of the situation in the most obnoxious way possible.
Oh, and with my theory, sorry, I keep talking. With my theory and kind of how annoying she is. So the night that Eleanor wanders the house, remember, she thinks she hears her mom and she's like wandering all through, ends up in the library, up on the stairs, and like wandering through these premonitions or these drawings of maybe her spirit in the house's power, whatever it is. And then Mrs. Montague, I can't remember how she said it, but she says something like, this silly girl is distracting us from the paranormal.
Yes.
And they're like, this is the paranormal.
Yes. Yes.
I kept feeling like she was doing stuff like that. Like, she didn't even want to hear about any of the paranormal activities that they had been to, like, every night. And I feel like they almost didn't want to tell her.
Yeah.
Did you get that vibe too? Which I thought was interesting, because I feel like in those moments, I feel like they'd all become like too close to the house or something.
Yes.
Because like they didn't want to, they were kind of gatekeeping.
Like almost not not wanting to betray the house is the feeling you get.
Yes.
They didn't say anything to her about, like, they would kind of try and say stuff and Miss Montague would like shut it down. But like she was looking for stuff and none of them would be like, dude, every single night our doors are like
rattling
and being attacked and we're hearing all these creepy noises. And also the other thing I noticed was, other than the night she arrived, which I think the house didn't like because that was the worst night, no other paranormal activities were caused other than by Eleanor, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, but
yeah, I don't know. I wondered, so kind of this idea of, is the house actually haunted, or are these people lunatics? Like, did they come in with their own mental illnesses? It made me wonder. I should have looked up a little bit more online, but I looked up a little bit. It doesn't say, but I wonder if this is her a little bit exploring mental illness and how the people may not see all the signs of mental illness in people that are close to them. I don't know.
I see clearly Eleanor's mental illness.
Yeah.
But
Maybe I'm not seeing
But did the people
do you guys
around
have
her
examples, or is there some sort of read you get on them that's a little odd? Like the
other characters?
the other characters. The Dudleys are weird, but they're just, I think, just
Luke's just
weird.
a little self-obsessed, but he's also
Yeah.
a rich kid. Like,
Yeah.
he comes from money, so kind of makes sense. And then
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't feel like I get mental illness from anyone else. I feel like
I only wonder if they're just mentally unstable people. Like, none of them are totally confident in who they are or what they're doing. So, not necessarily that they're all having these huge mental breaks, but because they're kind of around her, and she does definitely have some sort of mental illness going on, or she is being haunted by the house. That's just it. Like, I don't know, is it her mental illness, or is the house haunting her and causing her to appear like she is having a mental breakdown? I don't know. But it makes me wonder if they could be kind of influenced by that, just because none of them are totally confident, like self-assured people.
Yeah. I feel like when I was looking into reviews of the book, like before we read it, when we were trying to decide what book to read, and we ended up going with Hill House.
Yeah.
People either loved it or hated it.
Oh, for
There's
sure.
this
I
one
agree.
girl who like ranted about how unrelatable the characters were, and like she's just so bugged with the book being a classic, and she's like, it doesn't make any sense. And then there's like this dude, like a goatee and like circle glasses. He's like, it's the best horror book of all time. I was on the edge of my seat. Yeah, it's just like,
it's right up his alley.
Yeah.
it's just funny the different
The way they talked
Holes
was
the book has.
so weird, though. They
Yeah.
they would have these like, gosh, I wish I'd remembered this, but they'd have this conversation, and then all of a sudden, Theodora would like pretend like she's something, and then everyone would kind of follow in this charade of like they're a different character.
Yeah.
which is weird, and maybe that was the time. Maybe that's what like certain people did at that time. I just don't know. It just wasn't how I would interact with strangers I just met. I wouldn't pretend like I'm a prince with some people that I just met.
Well, and that's what also bothered me about Theodora, is because sometimes I feel like she made up these wild ideas, and I don't know if she was just a really artsy woman, and so she had these like big ideas. But do you guys remember when they went out to that picnic?
Yes.
And they start making up this story and just like going with it, and I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah. Did they see ghosts in the picnic, or was
I don't know. Or was that all? I don't know.
Theodora's like talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Didn't she say something like "run back to the house, don't turn around"?
Yes.
Or something like that. Like
There were 2 different times they went out. Remember, the first time was when they first arrived. They
And
went
they
out and
talked about doing
they
the picnic.
talked about a picnic, and then they actually went out and did the picnic. No, remember the first time they did the picnic. The next time they went out because they were mad. Remember, they stormed out of the house.
But like mad at each other, right?
Yes.
But still walking.
But
together.
like
Yes.
together walking
I
out.
thought that was funny.
And that's when the whole creepy scene happens. But I'm talking about the first time after they've
Yes,
just
yes.
arrived and they're sitting out there and
And
they're
they said,
watching
"We
the
must be
rabbit
cousins." Yeah.
and they're like, we must be cousins, and they're just going off on this like weird story that I'm like,
Yeah, that's the thing.
is she crazy? Is Theodora crazy? Like already,
No.
because I'm kind of getting this feeling that Eleanor is.
I think she's just artsy, and maybe that like hit Eleanor weird. Like she just sort of
Yes.
played along with it.
And maybe because she didn't have that older mental capacity, like we're saying, she was kind of stunted in her social skills and everything, that she really almost looked to her like a mother figure of somebody who's taking care of her and like buying into all these ideas of like, oh, you are.
Or the
we
first
must
like
be.
BFF peer kind of figure.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
There's so much influence in that relationship too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. When they did do so a little bit on color, when they did do that second walk into the woods when they saw the ghost
Yes.
picnic, like things just sort of went to gray. Do you guys remember this? Like the trees
remember.
became white, the background became black, every like color sort of
To
Faded
Eleanor's-
away.
from Eleanor's
disappeared.
perspective.
I don't remember. I'd have to read it again. I mean, I think
I think
I'm
the whole
guessing
book was
from-
written from her perspective, so
Yeah.
it would have been because
Well, there were
there's
a few
not.
scenes that weren't like. Remember when she was even like in like the kitchen or something, and then it was all of a sudden like, and what's her face? The room keeper shuddered. From,
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
what was that? Was I? Do you guys remember what that
Yeah,
was?
I do
Oh,
remember
It
that
was
vaguely.
It was when Eleanor was having her like crazy moment when she climbed up and
Yes.
was like gonna jump or something.
Yes. Like off that weird
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
landing
I
upstairs.
mean, like every once in a
yeah.
while, I think it would cut to someone else's perspective, or
You're
like,
right.
But I feel like okay, you know what? Maybe not, because I feel like when it did start doing that, it was when Eleanor started like feeling
yes.
the whole house.
Yes.
Yeah, she could hear everything in the house.
What
And that's
about-
how she could walk and avoid everyone in that one
Mhm.
night of
Yeah.
like her escape. She could hear them like on the other side of the house, and
so
she would
strange.
Mm-hmm.
avoid them. She tapped into the power.
Yeah.
Well, do you guys have I have a couple topics I want to talk about, but if you guys have things to bring up,
Let me.
I think
I want to talk color. I want to talk the architecture of the house.
we can do that, but after an epic game
Huh?
Ooh, let's do it.
planned.
What?
Yeah.
Let's do this epic game.
All right, game
All
theory.
right, well, oh my gosh. Well, I have two options. We can either do option 1 or option 2. And you
Okay.
guys get a pick, but
But we don't
you're
know what they are. We
blindsided
just
and
have
you
to
don't know what
say
they are.
one
You
or
just have to
two.
say 1 or 2.
All right, we got to do this Theodora style. Okay,
What?
you need to come up with a scenario where we are the duchesses of an estate.
What?
And
Or you can just decide on the
Or
freaking-
you can just pick
two.
one.
Option
Two?
2.
I'm gonna
All right.
go. Do I have to pick the same option as them?
Well, we'll just play one of the games. And
Okay, fine. We'll go with option 2.
okay, option. I won't even tell you what option 1 was. You guys don't get it now. But option 2 is we're all gonna go around and try to extend the end of the book or rewrite the end of the book.
Ooh.
And you may like funny or whatever,
Okay.
but just like try and maybe how you'd want the book to end, or a better way the book could have ended.
Okay. A better way for.
Guess
Oh. Yeah.
I guess I'll start. I don't know. It's kind
Go
of
ahead.
it's kind of a tricky game, but I don't know. So let's. Oh crap! This prompt is harder than I thought it would be.
I got it.
Okay.
All right. So Eleanor, so frustrated, she says, forget it. I'm just going to the closest airport. And she goes,
Because there's airports.
Because there's
Yeah.
airports.
Got it.
There's an airport there. So she goes to the airport, and as she's panning her passport and she's buying the ticket, she's about to cry, and she just misses everyone there, and she hears someone calling her name, and she turns around, and Luke's running after her. And just about
He's turned this into a romance.
Get on the gate. Luke throws his arms around her and says, "I love you. I've always loved you. The house is yours."
Oh, and he gave
And
her the
mine.
house.
And
Together.
mine.
And he falls down on one knee and offers to marry her
And
with
Taylor Swift starts playing.
and Taylor Swift starts playing. And he uses wood from the oak tree in the front to fashion a ring.
Wow. What? Well, how about maybe
A
he
baby
uses
cradle.
he uses the poisonous tree.
Oh,
Was that
Oleander?
annoying?
He makes an oleander ring for
And then they
her.
both die.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Okay, mine is a little creepier, but that's because I expected this to have a little bit creepier of an ending than it had. But that she becomes kind of one with the house, and the house doesn't like any of these other people. Kind of like the original sisters, you know, they were fighting over the house.
Yeah.
They both wanted it, but only one ends up with it, right?
That's right.
Okay. So in my opinion, it gets a little creepy where the house is like, I want all these other people gone. And you are going to take care of this for me. And so she takes them out one by one. But
Oh, yes.
and she ends up being the last one
With her
standing. Yeah. So she poisons one of them, maybe
Oleander.
with oleander. I was just gonna say it in their tea. So like in their tea, when they're doing their discussion, she uses oleander, or she's like,
She drops a lion statue on the other person. Because that's the other thing from
Yes.
the house. She saw those lion statues and she's
Right.
like, my house will have a lion statue.
yes.
So she.
And then the Star Cup. That was the other thing. Remember the
I don't
Star
remember
Cup?
the Star Cup.
She's in the restaurant. Oh, gosh.
Oh, in the cafe
Yeah,
before
and
when she
ta-
gets there.
She
Yes.
like incorporates that into her life. She's like, I
Yeah.
have a Star Cup in my
Yes, I
apartment
remember
at home.
that. That was
Bruh.
really weird, and she didn't have one. So
She
like
didn't have
I love
he
that.
just
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
so
Good.
she slowly takes them out,
Oh, here's a
and
so
then
much
the
better than
house
mine.
becomes hers,
That's in a true
and-
romance.
and she is one with that house.
I like that. I like that ending.
Really good.
Okay, here's my dream ending. You ready? So Eleanor is in the house, and then all of a sudden they have that big crazy night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she wakes up, and everything feels normal, and she doesn't sense everything in the house. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but Miss Montague wakes up. She's like, "Oh my gosh, everything feels weird. What the heck?" And then Miss Montague ends up going crazy, and then Miss Montague jumps off the top of the building and
What?
isn't a character anymore
Ooh.
because she's annoying.
Yes,
Contagious
I like that
mental
though,
disorder.
because
Okay,
that could be
this-
part of mine.
Right,
Where
okay.
she, like the house even helps take care of
Helps
some of
her.
the people for
Okay.
her. So the house like uses its powers to like convince people to commit suicide.
Miss Montague goes crazy because all of her weird techniques actually start working, and
Yes.
no one else is sensing anything anymore.
Yes.
And I was like, "What? Like, what are you talking about? This house isn't even haunted
Yes.
anymore. Like, we
Oh,
fixed that."
we fixed the problem.
Mm-hmm.
and like Mr. or Dr. Montague's like, "Oh yeah, my book's all successful now." But Miss Montague's
You've
like,
had it out for her from the beginning.
and Dr. Montague's like, "Oh yeah, I don't even like you anymore.
And finally
Like,
he
go
gets
away.
brave and he's like,
I'm married to Theodora now, so I don't need you." And then Miss Montague's like, "I don't know," and then all her signs start working, but nobody believes her because they think she's butthurt that Dr. Montague divorced her.
yes.
And,
Yeah.
and
I
then
like that.
She ends up dying.
Yeah.
because Heck Miss Montague, heck her. She's annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's super annoying, but perfectly annoying.
But perfect for her
Oh,
role.
she's
Yeah.
so annoying, but it's okay.
Yeah, perfect for her
That
role.
was a good game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
game.
Good game.
Oh man, I should have gone second or third. 'Cause
No,
it's-
yours was funny.
It was good.
Sleepless
It
in
turned
Seattle.
into a romance, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah. It's weird that it was Luke though. I feel like Luke hated her.
It should have been the
face by
house,
end of
like the
book.
house uprooted.
House.
Wait for
Like a
me.
transformer.
I love you.
All right, well, we can get back to talking about other things.
Yeah, good.
So
Yeah.
I was reading about what a huge influence this book had on thrillers, mysteries, horror genre, and that's why it's considered a classic. And even Stephen King has talked about how much this influenced him. And if
Really?
you look at some of his writings, like The Shining, and I'm not going to remember all the names now, but there were 2 or 3 books, especially his first book, and I can't remember the name of it, where he has like a character that's super similar to Eleanor. Her
That's
name is
interesting.
Carrie in the book. I just can't even think of the name of the book. But
That's funny,
he
'cause
has
Eleanor's sister's name was Carrie.
Yes. It has very similar. He talks about how it really influenced his want and desire to go into this genre of writing.
That's kind of dope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jackson Shirley, some of her other writing's really good. I don't
Shirley
know if-
Jackson.
Sorry, Shirley Jackson.
He's writing a bibliography for him.
Yeah, pretty much.
Jackson, comma Shirley.
Starting an essay or something. Yeah, so I feel like her other writing, I don't know. I wanted you guys to read The Lottery. And I
I read it in high
read it
school.
in, like, high
It's been
school.
so long.
Yeah, I haven't ever read it.
But I read another one of her pieces recently. The Lottery is really good, by the way. It's I don't really
Short
even-
story, right?
I
It's
don't,
pretty-
it's a short story. I don't even want to like, spoil it. It's just such a good read. But I'll talk about one of her other pieces, and it's called Possibility of Evil.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know anything
No.
about
Nothing.
that? Okay.
Uh-uh.
So it follows an old grandma and everyone in the town. So it starts with her going to get groceries, right? So she's going to get groceries, and everyone kind of seemed a little bit timid around her, and just like timid in general, and like kind of like like really looking out for
Yeah.
like something bad that's about to happen, which is weird.
Yeah.
And the whole time she's out, she's like, she's talking about like how bad these people are, but like not really.
Yes.
But she's like you know how like old grandmas can be like judgmental,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
They can just be like, oh, that baby's gonna end up just like her mom, like
Mhm.
an alcoholic or something like that. When the
Yes.
mom like is like drinking wine and it's not a big deal or something like that, you know.
Yes.
But it's
Mhm.
like, or it's like, oh, that girl's running off with that boy. And it's like
Mhm.
two teenagers. And like,
Mm-hmm.
they keep running
Teenagers
off
these
together,
days,
and
they
it's
ruin
like-
everything.
yeah, and it's just stuff like
That
that.
kind
And
of stuff.
so you can just tell that she's kind of feeling very nitpicky about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes home, and this is kind of where you start to realize, like, wait a minute. And she goes home, and she goes in her room, and she just starts writing the meanest letters to
Mhm.
people who live in the town, like, and so she'll write the letter and be like, da da da, keeps going off with da da da, and if you don't watch them, they're gonna become evil, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
stuff like that. And so she's writing all these anonymous letters
How
and
crazy.
sending them out to everyone in the town. And that's, you kind of was like, whoa, this grandma's like psycho. And it's kind of funny because
Yes.
it's like this grandma's just writing the meanest letters to everyone
Yes.
in the town.
But the people in the town,
They don't know it's her.
but they act timid around her.
They just are acting timid in the book. And it's just like,
Okay.
it feels like something's like off. Like not
Okay.
totally, but just like a little bit.
But they
Yeah.
kind of look at her sideways as they walk through the
Not
grocery-
even necessarily to her, but just like in
the
general.
whole town is a
Yeah,
little.
it's just kind of
Ah.
all off.
So her
because it's
letters have created
Yes.
this level of
Yeah.
anxiety. in the
anxiety
town.
that someone's like really judging everyone. And,
Yeah.
like, and so like it causes problems. Like even parents are like getting angry at kids now for like things that they're
They haven't even
like
necessarily
doing,
done.
but like not necessarily.
Yeah.
So like she'll like write and be like, if you don't watch this, then this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so what ends up happening is she goes to drop off her letters that she just wrote for the night, and she comes across the boy and the girl that she wrote a letter about, like being somewhat romantically involved, but
Yeah.
like not really, just like teenager like
Yes.
dating or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I can't keep doing this anymore. My dad doesn't want us to date because he heard these like awful things about you.
Yeah.
And or the lady in the book is the old grandma. She's like she doesn't hear this necessarily. She like
Yeah.
kind of picks up on a little bit of it, but she's like, oh, I should write another letter about like these
Hmm.
kids. But she drops them off, and one of her letters ends up falling to the ground. And the boy picks it up, and he like is calling out to her, but
Yeah.
she doesn't hear because she's old or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's okay. It's titled to da da da. I'll just go deliver it to him. And
Yeah.
so he goes and takes the letter to the guy.
Yeah.
And it cuts back to, I didn't even talk about this. She's like these beautiful flowers all in her front
Okay.
yard.
Only
And
in
she
her.
like really takes care of them.
Mhm.
But the boy takes the letter to the guy's house, and she wakes up the next morning, and she's like, just like walks outside, and she has a letter on her door, and it's the one that she sent. And it's like, it says something like, how do you like us now, or something like that.
Huh.
It's just like, and
Yeah.
she looks out on her front patio, and all her flowers are destroyed, and it ends with her like crying.
Oh, poor
God.
grandma. She's just trying to help the
Terrible
community.
story.
She had
So-
so much positive
I took way
insight.
too long to tell that, but it's such a funny story.
That is
Yeah.
so
I ended it
weird
and
and random.
I was like laughing. I was like, this is such a like a ridiculous story.
How funny. Well, what does that tell you about her writing style? Is there something about I mean, because that's not.
I feel like she just loves to throw this little twist at the end.
yeah,
Yeah.
she likes
Have it
that
be
little
like-
twist,
But I feel like
unexpected
In
ending.
this one, I feel like the twist came halfway through when you realized that the grandma was the problem.
Yes. Yeah, I just find it interesting how unique she was. I mean, there were people like Edgar Allan Poe, and there were people writing horror and thriller and all of that at the
Yeah.
time, but she was just doing it in her own unique way.
Yeah.
And
She's
I-
a very fun style, I think.
yeah,
And even in that old story, The Possibility of Evil, there's probably some good lines from that I even missed, but it was just such a funny story.
yeah,
Well, I read a little bit about her. I guess she was a little bit of an occultist, which is someone that
interesting.
looks for paranormal or supernatural explanations for certain sorts of things,
Hmm.
like believes in powers beyond what we can see through
Yeah.
or measure through science or observation. That stuff can be, a little uncomfortable or creepy to look at or discuss, but that's kind of her frame of reference maybe for some of the things that she came up
Yeah.
I feel like the more you know about the author, the more you'll kind of realize about her reading, which I don't feel like is true for a lot of authors.
Hmm.
I feel like for her, it's like you kind of need to know where you're getting this book from.
Yeah.
with. Yeah. And the other thing I learned from her is that she kind of had a rough at-home relationship. Her husband was distant, and I think she would look to let out a lot of her frustrations, fears, and angers through writing.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens a lot. I think I've never been like much of an artist, but I think sometimes that hurt motivates creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your outlet. It's your way to express what's going on without having somebody to talk to or some way to take care of the situation. So, for sure.
Yeah. And even with this character, Eleanor, she had some creative, a little odd, but ideas in her drive up about different life and her solutions for the I guess the jail or prison that she'd been in her whole life,
Mm-hmm.
how to escape them, and it's a sad way that she ultimately escaped.
Yeah.
Pretty good ending to the book, though, I think. I think our endings were better, though.
Yeah, I
With
think
all
so
due
too.
respect.
Why didn't she consult with us before she finished writing the
Yeah.
book?
Seriously.
Yeah, why end it so abruptly? Why it seems harsh to me. You say it's a good ending, but it seems kind of harsh.
I kind of like that with endings. It's just maybe a
Maybe.
personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to want to find a meaning, and I don't know what the meaning is. I don't know what
Of the whole book.
No, of her dying.
Her
Like,
dying.
what's the good message? And maybe there is no good message.
Yeah, I just think it's
I
like
think
a
it's just,
horror.
yeah. And
or
the idea that mental illness can take people's lives.
Yeah.
I think is kind of, for me, why I kept going back to this idea of mental illness is because I kept feeling like we don't, as a society, we're getting better as a society about understanding mental illness and really trying to help people with it. But it sadly can take people's lives if we're not aware and helping or,
Yeah.
And the idea of a perfect
I don't
storm, like she may have
Yeah.
been, it may not have been the house bringing her there, but in any case, she was like the worst case scenario for that house.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And I found myself in situations where with my whatever my propensities are, my struggles or challenges, like I'm in a donut shop and I want the carbs and I'm trying hard not to eat carbs. No,
Yeah.
maybe not like that, but like with things in life where the circumstances put you into a harder situation
yeah,
than someone else would be based on who you are and what you're
Oh, for
struggling
sure.
with.
for sure. I agree with that.
And so I don't know what the caution is. Maybe I like to have a good message to learn and grow from.
Then you
Mhm.
shouldn't have read a horror book.
I know that's it. Maybe that's it. We just leave it at that. But maybe understand our weakness and keep ourselves away from.
Yeah. I feel like once she was there too long, it was like she was stuck there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wasn't ever going to leave that house alive, in my opinion, or herself anymore.
Yeah, true.
Another thing that's kind of interesting that I was just kind of like considering while reading the book is the like asymmetricalness of the interior of the house, and how they're even talking about like
Yeah,
how hard
like
it is to
all different
navigate,
little, like,
and how that could have even caused some sort of problems for them. I feel like walking into a home that's not in order, even on a microscopic scale, you can still feel a sense of like offness.
Yes.
It's funny. This just happened yesterday. We changed our art room table in the other room, and Mom and I took the legs off because they have an adjustable leg, and we put the legs back on. And there's something about the way Mom got back up that like
It looked slanted.
the table looked slanted, and she almost like lost her.
Yes, it was really
She's
weird.
fully disoriented
I
for
was
the
like-
table, and then she looked at it again. She's like, "Oh no, that's perfectly level."
And
But that
it really
perspective
was.
on life based off of just an askew angle is enough to just
mess her up.
It totally
Make her
did
go,
for a
"That's
minute.
funny."
It
I didn't know
really
that happened.
bothered my mind. And even after, and I still think about it, I'm like, that was so trippy. I hated that feeling. I don't like that feeling. I never want to feel that
But
feeling
imagine
again.
everywhere you look, like this just doesn't. That line's not.
Okay, so there's a real life. I should have looked this up actually. It just reminded me though. And
I
maybe
think I know
should
what you're
I
talking about.
look this up really quick?
Is it just the
But
house?
it's the real life house that's like on the East Coast somewhere where there was a woman that continually, like her husband was.
No, West Coast. It was in California. The
It was?
Winchester House. He's
Oh, the
guy
Winchester house.
Yeah, the guy that
Yep.
came up with the rifle, and she felt haunted by all the lives lost through
Yeah.
her husband's inventions. And so she would build the house to confuse the haunting
Yes.
spirits with dead ends and
Weird doors.
angled doors and
Yeah.
So crazy.
stairways
Super
to
wacky.
nowhere. Yeah, that's weird.
I want to go to that house sometime. It
Well, I
just
think I
sounds
know where this
interesting.
is. So you guys probably didn't have the same dilemma, but I was trying to figure out, where is this house?
What house?
This Hill House.
Oh, okay. From
Like
the
it's
book.
in the U.S., but where? For the
Yeah.
whole time I read it, I was picturing New England. It's like it's Vermont or New York or
Yeah.
Mhm.
Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Maryland. I don't know. It's somewhere up there.
Yeah.
Where'd you figure out it was?
Well, oleander only grows in Zone 8 in the U.S.
Mhm.
hardiness zone. So that's like Georgia, Florida, Alabama,
Yeah,
Louisiana,
South.
Texas, but going through Arizona, California, and then all the way up to Washington, and
Oh,
Oregon.
it grows around here.
Oregon would definitely be a good place for a haunted house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be.
It's nice and spooky forest here.
Yeah. I'll agree.
But it's not Maine. So I had to reread the book with a different perspective.
Yeah.
So the Netflix series.
I watched a sneak peek of the ending
watch
on
it, or-
how Eleanor dies,
It's different.
and it's different, and
Yeah.
it's not as good.
Oh.
It's
But
kind of lame.
It
I mean, it was like
2018
freaky,
it came out.
but, yeah,
and,
2018.
couple episodes. Should we watch it? Should we ask people
Yeah.
to?
No,
No?
it didn't
Okay.
look good. I mean, I don't know. If other people have other things to say, then we'll watch it. But it didn't seem very interesting to me.
Huh.
Just like it seemed like we'd watch him like that's not how it happened in the book. Like when you first watched like
Oh, yes.
The
I think
Harry
it's
Potter-
intentionally different
Yes.
though.
I agree. But like it's like
Mhm.
when you first watch
Yes,
the
like
movie
Harry-
version of a book.
Yes.
And if you haven't read the book Harry Potter, people are like, I love the movies. But if you've read the books and then you watch them, you're like, but they left out like 20 amazing events that happened.
That's true. So I think if you don't like if like with Harry Potter, it's like if you don't read the book for like a while and you watch the movies are great.
Yeah.
They did the movies really well.
Yeah, they did.
But if you read the book and then watch the
Mm.
movies, you just have this like realization of like
yes.
how many cool things that could have been in the movie.
Mhm.
that were
But the
left
movies
out.
were already super long. They
Yeah.
had to shorten
Yep,
them.
Yep.
But I know.
Or like things that they did include. You're like,
Yeah,
what?
I agree. It's always funny how that happens.
I didn't get into color theory. Should I talk about colors or no?
Yeah. You can talk about
Okay,
colors.
I'll try and go quick. So a couple mentions of color. They are each assigned a different color room. So Eleanor's in the blue room. Theodora is in the green
Mhm.
room. The doctor is in the yellow room, and Luke is in the pink room.
Hmm.
And so first was trying to figure out like what's going on with the colors. Like maybe green for Envy because she's sort of envied Theodora for her carefree, easygoing personality, or maybe Theodora actually envied Eleanor because Eleanor's the one that the house paid attention to. So maybe there's some green from envy. Blue is kind of depressed and subdued, and that's
Mhm.
maybe Eleanor at first.
Yeah.
And then
Sadness.
yellow is I just happy is what I think of yellow, and then pink is kind of bright and.
It's just the quirky color.
Yeah, it is.
But what's the combination? I mean, why wasn't it like common colors like red,
Right.
yellow, green, blue. Like why
Yeah.
that combination of colors?
It's really
And
interesting.
I where did I get this bruise? I was looking at my bruise on my thigh the other day, and it's all of those colors. And I wonder if it's like the color of like a contusion. It's the color of a healing wound. And that's her. She's dealing with this healing wound. Because what other I'm sure she had reason for her mix of colors. Why that combination of colors?
Yeah, it's super strange.
And why not like the colors of a rainbow
Yeah.
or like the only thing that's not part of a bruise is pink, but that's like the color of flesh, which is like
Yeah.
Yeah.
very gory. But the book wasn't at all gory.
No.
No.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other thoughts of color, sir, and then I'll be done. She was really bugged when Theodora painted her toenails
Yes.
red. Like red was such an off-putting
Yes.
color for
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Eleanor, and she had that red sweater that she gave to Theodora because her wardrobe had been
Yeah.
bloodied.
Bloodied out.
Mhm.
But she chose like red to give her.
And
Yeah,
she
it's
Yeah.
chose
strange.
red to give to her. So I don't know. Like I'm sure Shirley Jackson was intentional with her colors.
Oh, for sure.
But I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what it all means.
she wrote a lot into that book. I feel like there's a ton that we could talk about.
Yeah.
that
Symbolism.
you just need to look into. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
so much symbolism that we didn't talk about.
Yeah. It's one of those books that I feel like you would read in high school or college, and
Just
they
for
would
the-
just talk through all the symbolism and all
Yeah.
of those
Oh, yeah.
details that,
And then you'd hate the book.
yeah.
And then you'd hate
You'd
it.
hate the book. Actually, I loved that in high school. I had a really amazing AP English
I
teacher
don't
that
like it.
talked through books. I was just like, and so those books became some of my favorite.
I don't like it because I'm angry that I can't pick up on it myself.
Mhm.
And I need an
Yeah.
English teacher to tell me what's
Mhm.
going
I
on.
see what you're saying.
It's like, why can't I just be smart
But
enough?
that's like what true education should be, like mentor mentee, like them
Right.
teaching you how to do that
But-
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I'm reading like a book on my own, it's like I'm not personally picking up on all this
Yeah.
special symbolism. I'm just reading the book. And I feel dumb for not reading the book cooler. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Read cooler, Jack.
Apparently.
Read cooler.
Don't be a big L.
And with that, our motto: read cooler. Read cooler,
Yeah.
guys.
We say that a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
All the time.
Read cooler.
In the last 5 minutes, we've said that a lot.
All right. Well, thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This spooky one's gonna maybe come out after Halloween, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, thank you for watching.
Mhm.
Have a good Halloween, or had a good Halloween.
Had a good Halloween. Read cooler.
Read cooler.
Wraps up.